Hello, and welcome to my podcast series, Talks with Educators, where I speak to real educators whose stories, struggles, and wisdom can point us in the direction of building the future of education. Today's special guest is Dr. Calvin Lawrence. Dr. Lawrence has over 40 years of experience in all areas of education, including being a special education teacher, a principal, and a university professor. Calvin is focused in on people and service. And he's written a new book, a memoir, which I have here, The Happy Leader, which is a soul-facing guide for anyone who's trying to navigate leadership and wants to lead with care and connection as their guiding lights. Currently, Calvin runs Calvin Lawrence Speaks, where he engages all kinds of audiences in discussions about motivation, diversity, and leadership. And hello, I'm Christina Kottman. I'm a former elementary educator and I taught for a decade in international schools. And now I'm a coach for educators and I explore what's already working in education around the world. This is the first of 4 episodes with Dr. Calvin Lawrence, where we dive into the stories from his book and his life that have shaped who he has become as a mentor and a leader in education. So our first episode today is going to be all about the power of mentorship in education. And to ground anyone who's listening, I want you to think first, right now, about a moment when someone believed in you before you even believed in yourself. Think about that mentor or leader who showed up and saw some strength, some opportunity in front of you that you couldn't recognize. And so let's jump into this first conversation with Dr. Calvin Lawrence with that visual in mind. All right, Dr. Calvin Lawrence, it's so great to have you here today.
Thank you, Christina. I am overjoyed. I guess I would say over the moon to be here.
Okay, well, I'm so overjoyed to talk with you because I just finished reading your amazing book, The Happy Leader. And there are so many great stories in here that I think a lot of educators need to read the book, but also are just going to resonate with the conversations that we're going to have right now.
Sounds great. I hope I don't get too JMU carried away because I know this is the first time since that book came out that I have had a JMU alum in the room, someone who is going to interview me, who has a JMU experience. And so I am going to probably go a little crazy, but I know you are great at reeling people back in. So I'm excited about that. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, speaking about JMU, let's start off by talking about an experience that changed your life, the football injury, which was in your sophomore year at JMU, right? And it set off a whole different trajectory.
Set off a entirely different trajectory because maybe without the injury, I play for a full 4 years or 5 if I had the, but it really changed my thinking about who I was, what my priorities were and whatnot. So let me get to the injury. So that year, the sophomore year, I'm coming back. I am ready, Christina. I am in shape. I'm bigger, stronger, faster than I've ever been. I think I remember when they clocked me, I ran the fastest 40 time and all this. So I'm thinking this is going to be a phenomenal year. And on the other side of the line, there was this guy who he eventually went to the NFL. So he was just that good. So I knew we were going to be great together. And at the beginning of the year, we have these preseasons kind of scrimmages with other schools, and this in particular was this one time. And I'm coming around the corner as a sack rush lineman, and I get what's the word for it? There's a word for it in football, but it's like I get high low. So I get set up high, and then a guy cuts my knee out from under me low. One of the things that it wasn't just a JMU thing, it was that era, which, and I need to back up a little bit. We're talking about the late 70s, early 80s. You know, I'm an old timer. So that era for AstroTurf was really like that AstroTurf. It was hard, scrabble stuff. And what happened was, in terms of the injury, my knee had nowhere to go. So your cleats, the turf cleats, they had stuck hard into the ground. And when you get a blow, it's like your knee's got to go somewhere, right? And the knee is designed to do front, back, not side to side. I get this blow from the side, and so it's got to go somewhere. It goes out to the other side. So a medial collateral ligament was torn completely. And so I'm sitting there. I'm boy, you know how your life flashes in front of you. This is one of those times where it really does. The memory that came to me first, the very first thing that flashed in my head was a guy named Gail Sayers who had a similar knee injury way back in the 60s. And so when I was laying on the ground, I remembered that thing. I also, though, remember that Sayers came back from that. He was able to come back. And so in my head, I'm thinking this season is over, but I didn't feel like my career was quite over. And maybe it was helpful to have that movie in my head because I was going to come back to, I was kind of determined. But what it did during the time, and I'm moving fast forward, and during the time with all this recovery and all these things that, different rehabilitative deals that I have to do, boy, it was crazy because I even had to learn how to walk again. Once they put that cast on, your leg atrophies to the point where you can't walk. I got up, and the first time I fell on the ground, it was like, oh, I'll never walk again. Well, of course, a couple of days later, I'm walking, but I'm not, so it's just a weird time. But I had all this time to think. Some good, some bad. I got fixated on a soap opera called General Hospital, and at the time they had this huge Luke and Laura thing. So I'm sitting in there. I'm in the hospital, and then I'm recovering in a recovery area. And what do? You watch TV. That's all you can do. I didn't want to do a lot of studying and whatnot, and it wasn't time yet. It was before the school year had actually started, and I get hooked on that. So that's on like a side note, because no one would think of me as a soap opera guy, but at that particular time I was, because that's what came on every day. And so you followed this saga of Luke and Laura. And so going back to my reflective pieces, I'm thinking even then I was going to come back, but in my mind, I think I knew I was not long for football. And I also had to think about my future and being involved in other things that would get me prepared for my future. And so I played that one extra year. And then I had this conversation with one of my teammates about maybe stepping down from the team. Now, I did this at a time between seasons that I thought it wouldn't be so disruptive. They could replace me. They could do all these other things. And I will tell you, Christina, if for any reason that particular guy, and his name was Clyde Hoy, he was one of my line mates, if he had said, oh, no, Calvin, no, you got to stay, he had been pleaded with me, I probably would have capitulated. But what he did was he released me by saying, we're with you no matter what. Wow. You got my vote. And when I walked away from that meeting, it didn't matter who else said anything. It was like, okay, now I'm journeying. I'm moving into the next phase of my life, whatever it's going to be. So, I mean, that kind of encapsulates that whole story. But I got more involved on the college campus, a lot of different things, trying to prepare myself for life after school. Didn't realize, though, that I would have that one extra year because I was a 5-year man. 5 year, I'm putting up 4. I better make it 5. 5-year man. And so it gave me a little more time to be prepared. But I think I needed more time to be prepared. Some people do.
Yeah, sometimes when we have that being down moment, it's a real chance to reflect and think about our priorities and think about, what am I actually doing with this career, with this trajectory? And I remember reading in the book that this was a real moment where you shifted into thinking about service and considered changing from physical therapy into maybe doing education. So let's talk more about the education side. How did you start getting involved with the idea that school and working with people in that context would be the right path for you? And I'm thinking specifically of the educator right now who's listening, who might feel really stuck in the passion of education, but also in the management and the compliance top-down system.
Yes. Yeah, because there's so much of that. And you're right. I was starting to think about service, and I made the switch. I was a little bit lacking in the area of math and science. I mean, I would tell anybody, and this is maybe not just an educator advice piece, but it's also for these these high school guys that want to just kind of take it easy or do whatever. And I needed a little bit more. And there were a couple of years, my last and my junior year in high school, that I could have taken some subjects that would have prepared me better. I say this in a good way. I needed more. I needed to be as good as I could be, which meant, what else is there with regards to knowing how to do my piece of the role well? Well, one of those things was special education and working with special populations. And so I don't know if I had planned on getting that minor, but I did. And I did, not only did I do the class work, but I also did camps in the summer that were designed to work with different special population groups. I always made sure I was involved with Special Olympics. And I remember one camp that was very vivid in my memory. I even have a book somewhere that we did, like a little, like a collage of some stuff and songs and things that we did. It was what it shows the time period I was in, because a lot of students who were in special education were institutionalized, and they did not have the inclusion and the bringing into the mainstream of life that they have now. Well, back then, the camps allowed those kids to get away from the institutions that they were involved in, and then we had fun with them. And so I learned how to work with people. I learned patience, and then I had some administrative or leadership duties at that camp, which really helped me prepare for the other thing. I'll throw this in too, because you said about educators, my thing is with education, it's like, you've got the system, but you've got to do what you can do in your space. And everybody can do something and do probably more than the minimum. So it was about doing more than what's the minimum to get out. Because a lot of people look at it from that standpoint. And I think that's when you get stymied later, is that you do the minimum and you're stuck. If you do the maximum of whatever you can do, whatever that is, it made me a much better, much more prepared professional coming out, so that I knew that I had avenues to go no matter what I got stuck. And there still were periods of time in my life after the fact, they're in the book, that I questioned my educational journey. But it always came back to impact, who I serve, the influence that I have, and I just enjoy working with young people. So if that is who you are and you're listening, you're in the right field. No matter what the top down piece is, just make sure, if you can move to where you've got great leadership, because that always trickles down. That's so impactful. And be the best you can be in that. You're always trying to get better at whatever you do. Because if you start getting dull, it's time to get out. You got to keep that wheel sharp, and that's one of the tricks to being able to be vibrant and to stay in that career and enjoy what you do.
Exactly. And I think that takes us perfectly into talking about mentorship and the power of mentorship, particularly in education, because oftentimes teachers will end up in the profession and they'll start feeling like, I want to do everything. I want to save the world. I want to be the best teacher ever. But it's really impossible to do that work alone. And that's why you must find mentors. And I know that this is a big part of the mission of your work outside of the book and with the speaking career. So let's talk about mentorship. How would you advise someone to find a mentor or to become a mentor if, say, they're in their mid-career and they're finding that lack of purpose?
So to find a mentor, and I've had these incredible young people who ask me that question. And I know I had a list of 4 things, but the one in particular is, you've got to find someone who speaks your language. And there's always someone out there that you just get in touch with and you start talking to, and it's like you've known them for years. And I had some of those people at Madison who continued to be my mentors as long. One was a lady who was probably the reason that I came to Texas, and the reason that I got so heavy in the special ed and the physical education part of special education. Her name was Jane Kruger, and she still lives in Harrisonburg. Such a loving lady, but big reason, a huge mentor for me, a huge reason that I got to Texas. I got to Texas as fast as I could, and I learned from some people who she had that textbook. it is so important to find people. And I didn't realize this when I was in college or coming out of college. I just kind of got lucky, Christina. I think people felt sorry for me maybe because they looked at me and like, this goofy guy, he needs a lot of help. But now I would say be very intentional about looking for these people. They don't necessarily have to be, and I will underline this one, in your field. It helps when they are, but you need mentors. And so you find that person, hang on to them for dear life. Mentorship is a two-way street. They will need you for some things as opposed, and to me, I always say this about the mentor. I get more out of it mentoring people than I think I give. Now, that's a tall order, but I really do think people who want a mentor, and there are a lot of us out here that do, and I'm at the stage of my life, we really want to give and we really want to help people overcome some obstacles that we had and that we didn't see. By the flip side, you have to be the type of person as a mentor, if you're a mentor, to walk across the room. So I'm playing it from both ends because I know that I've had a hard time sometimes influencing people to say they need a mentor. I mean, I don't know if it's pride, I don't know if it's fear. It's probably a little bit of both, that people are a little bit hesitant to go and talk to somebody and say, hey, you know what? I like what you do. The mentors have to be the types of people that show that they're inviting. You got to smile. You got to have fun with some stuff so that you are inviting, and then be able to walk across the room, because sometimes that's what it takes, and make the introduction first. And if you do that, and invite, be in, leave your information, let them know, that kind of thing. Uh, you never know. You might get 1 out of 9, you might get 1 out of 3, but those people that come back and they talk to you, man, it's a powerful thing. Let me just tell you, I have one young man in particular that I worked with about a year or so ago, but I still think he considers me a mentor because we keep tabs on each other. So anything that I do, he responds to. I'll check on him every semester because he finished his associates. He's working on the last 2 years of his bachelor's, and I want him to finish. And you've got to be intentional on both sides. You've got to go and find that person, and you can find them. But most of the times, when I say, and I'll end it with this, when I say speak the same language, it's not that they speak a language other than English. If you're an English speaker or Spanish speaker, or in your case in Brazil, Portuguese, it is that when you talk, you connect. But boy, when we got into the same room, and Jane Kruger was like that, same opposite, we just connected, and we've been lifelong friends and mentors and mentees for that period of time.
Exactly. It's finding your people, finding that community that believes the same things as you and is moving in the same direction. And I think that kind of takes us back around to the story of the injury, because when educators are maybe facing a moment of turmoil, maybe it's leaving a job or a transition to a new location, new school community, it can be really hard to pick yourself up and be resilient through that challenge. And that's one thing we're going to talk about a little later in the third episode, about resilience and weathering the storm. But for now, thinking about mentorship, how would you advise perhaps someone you're working with, you're mentoring, to go through that experience of the turmoil, to go through that moment where your knee is knocked out from under you and your whole life trajectory shifts?
It's tough. There are several ways you can do it. Of course, you're right there to commiserate with them, and then maybe even to share your own personal story, because personal stories are big. I'll use this one. This is a real deep one. But I had a young man who came to me while I was an assistant principal at a school, and I don't know why he came to me, because it wasn't that we were that close, but I think, in retrospect, that he saw something in me that he could trust. And trust is huge in regard to that mentorship. You got to find someone that you can trust. And so he came to me and he shared that he was thinking about committing.
Wow.
That's powerful in itself. But for him to admit and to want help and to reach out and to tell me maybe some of the reasons why he just thought his life was not worth anything, was really important to me. So I made sure at that time, I mean, we weren't in an era where they were talking about mental health like they do now, for sure. And especially not with men. And so I made sure that he got connected with a counselor. But then I knew I hadn't done enough. And it was one of those times when I always used to feel like if I can't sleep at night, there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a problem that caused me to toss and turn. The next day, I wrote something to him that I still have. It's in the book. It's that late bloomer poem that I wrote, and it was kind of telling my life story. That I was a late bloomer. That I was always behind. Always felt like I was somewhat of a misfit, right? And if you can get to a point where you get so miserable and despairing that you just give up hope. But don't give up hope. That whole thing was about not giving up hope. So what you want to do is you try to give them pieces. It may be your story, it may be someone else's story, it may be something that you share together. But in order to get to the crux of it, to tell them to push forward, push through, because look what happened to me at the end. There are lots of good things that have happened because I didn't stop. The knee injury on that field could have debilitated me for life if I had let it do that. But I wasn't going to let it do that. One reason that I didn't was because I had too many people who were counting on me to do something with my life. And so it's important to have those people and to find people who can help. And maybe that mentor assist in helping that person find a few more people to be a part of what you said, the network, to help them and assist them. Because we can't, here's the deal. We can't do life alone. We can't do life in a vacuum. We're here for relationship. And so it's important to have people who are helping you, guiding you on the side, encouraging you, pushing you. Sometimes, as one of my good friends said, sometimes it's a push, a pat on the back, and sometimes it's a little bit lower and a little bit harder. And sometimes you need all of that, yeah, to get over those humps. And so I'm just gonna put it that way. But you need that extra encouragement. Sometimes it's just a phone call. How you doing? Are you on it? You lost your job. What are you doing this week? Okay, what are you doing this week? All right, let's meet for coffee. I've had so many people do that, and there have been times, and it's in that writing that I did, where I was in those low areas. I call them the desert times, and I had people who would just get me right on through it. They would just guide me through it. They would assist me through it. We all need that. And the younger, and I'm not going to pick on this generation, but I know these guys need as much help as I did, if not more. And their services, but yet it's important for people to be themselves and be real, and that you have someone that's not maybe assigned to you, but they assign themselves to you, if that makes any sense. That they come alongside of you because they want to help you. And then, and then those really great things happen.
Exactly. And it's remembering that those moments of stillness, you're planting the seeds for the next stage of your life. And particularly if you're working with others, you might be seeing something in them that they can't see in themselves. That's a great aspect of coaching and mentorship, that you're able to pull out their strengths and talents and help them rewrite the narrative that is maybe keeping them stuck in feeling like I can't, I shouldn't, I won't be able to succeed at this. I think it's really important to emphasize and like double click on for educators that when there's a moment in your life that you didn't expect, it's an opportunity to seek out that support through mentorship, through a community. It's not a moment where your life is collapsing and everything is just gone. And finding those opportunities to connect with others and recognize that you're on a journey of rebuilding, that sets you up for the next stage of your success.
It's so good. Yeah, that's so good, Christina. You're a coach, you're a consultant, you're an international educator. You know yourself how you have come alongside people and helped them see things in themselves they didn't see in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But you said it, and I'm gonna just kind of highlight this one. It's an opportunity for growth. Sometimes those low times that we have are times that we can grow, we can reflect. We've got a little time to pause, maybe even catch our breaths because we're not so locked in. And if you use it that way, use it for yourself to grow. When I think about that coming off the injury, I had this time and I needed to fill the time to the end game of what I want to be when I get out of here, when I leave JMU. And it was, okay, where can I plug in? Where do I fit in? And all these little places. And I wouldn't have done half of the things maybe if I had been in the other spectrum of just being a student athlete. But there are a lot of other things outside of those two pieces, especially when you're in that environment and you can get involved in so many things that have been good for me and have grown me in my life were things that I did after that. I didn't look at it as so much as a devastating loss as I did as an opportunity for me to grow and get better and mature.
Exactly. It's the whole saying of when one door closes, a window opens, and you never know what opportunities are on the other side of going through that moment of turmoil and rebuilding. And that takes us into what we're going to talk about in the next episode, which is leadership in schools, and particularly how to grow a school community. So if you've enjoyed our conversation, stick around for the next episode where we're talking to Dr. Calvin Lawrence all about leadership in schools. And thank you for joining us today. We'll see you in the next one.